Hello, and welcome to the Outpost Frequencies from lastmovieoutpost.com, where you can get all of your news, reviews, and everything cool about films. It's the 3rd of October. I don't know what's happened to the rest of the year, but we are in Halloween month. And talking with me today is going to be Drunken Yoda. Amateur hour. It's every hour is amateur hour with Drunken Yoda. While he gets his sound working, I'm not George Lucas. Dom couldn't join us today because he is away, but hopefully he'll be back next week if we let him out of his GIMP box. And today we are going to be talking about, in particular, Venom, which is going to be interesting because I haven't seen the new one yet, but Yoda has. Are you now with us?
No.
Oh, okay. Okay, then I shall just carry on talking. So we're going to talk about the news first of all. Now, one of the biggest clicks that we've had on the website this week is about Gladiator 2 is ready to shoot. Now, Gladiator is one of those beloved properties, which is just one of those films which is generally just respected and loved by everyone. There's not many people that criticize that movie because it is such an amazingly good film. Now,
I think Russell, I'm here, but I'm noisy.
Okay.
So I will work on that. But you guys, if you can tell me, let me know. NGL, you look like a UK strongman. That's from Bionic
yeah, totally.
Bigfoot.
That's because you're only seeing this part of me.
That's right.
If it carried on down, you would understand that I am not.
And the beard hides the three chins that I got.
Yeah, that's right. I like to call them the George Lucas jowls. That's what they hide. So, okay, are you now with us, Yoda?
I think so. It seems to be the little green and yellow seems to be moving when I talk, so I think that's a good thing. Unfortunately, the noise canceling thing crashed on me just as we came on, and that's why that happened. So I'm going to try to bring that back up, but. Yeah, we'll do the best we can here.
You sound okay here.
Yeah, I'm talking to the same microphone. You're hearing me through the same microphone that everybody else is. Yeah. So if you're not hearing a lot of noise and I sound okay to you, then I think we're good.
Okie doke. So I just started on the news about Gladiator 2. And so it seems that Russell Crowe has come forward and sort of said that it's ready to go and he actually wants to film it.
They're going to need a lot of CGI for him. He is pretty. He's got a dad bod that goes on for.
I made the joke of somebody that when somebody posted the picture that the sequel or the movie could be called "Glad He Ate Her" because it does look like he's eaten more than a few people over the last few years.
He has
now Interestingly, I just looked up and I was right that the rumor is that Maximus may be brought back to life to carry on his tale of revenge.
Well, I mean, there wasn't really any magic in the original Gladiator. There wasn't any mysticism, as I recall. It was much more grounded.
It was set in a reality.
It could have been. It could have been a historical epic. I'm not saying it was, but it could have been. But what you're saying just sounds like they're going to a whole new level. Hey! Just quick breaking news: the Facebook stream has the correct title.
Goodness me!
Thank you.
Wow!
Thank you.
Wow! All that prayer and dancing to those evil gods has worked. That's fantastic.
Now the one that I set up for a schedule, that one's still there, but I couldn't access it, so it's dead. Okay. So I'm deleting that one. So it's not perfect, but at least hey,
it's something.
It's only taken 17 tries. Hey,
that's as bad as your upload to Bond, wasn't it? Let's not get. Do you know what?
Too soon.
I don't want to anger you. So let's go briefly move over that. So, like you say, Gladiator was sort of set in a realistic world where obviously, if they are going to be talking about resurrecting him, it could be kind of a similar to, not the same as, but similar to like an Assassin's Creed type thing.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong. I know the story is mostly fictionalized, but wasn't he a real guy?
It was based on a real person.
It was based on a real guy, and some of it was. I mean, like the beats or his basics of his story, I think were there. I'm guessing he was a general that became a gladiator. I don't know what happened after that. But, I mean, now he's going to come back to life. I mean, because now we're getting into 300 territory, I know 300 was real, but I know that... or the
there was also a lot of mysticism. And...
Yeah, they weren't fighting a 7-foot gay Iranian, so...
And guys with blades for their hands and that kind of thing. But also, because the story is also very similar to Ben-Hur as well, isn't it? Of a great person who was then sent to the galleys and then came back and fought his way back and everything else.
Moses.
Yeah.
You could kind of say from the Egypt, he was the prince of Egypt.
Yeah. Oh, so I suppose, I mean, maybe that is the story, but whether he was actually a real guy, because I know, what was his name? Biggest Dickus was a real guy, wasn't
he? He should have been.
And Sillius Sodus.
Are you laughing?
But
take him away.
I mean, in some respects, obviously a sequel to Gladiator couldn't go forward because Russell Crowe had died, and so if it was a sequel, it would have had to have been based on a new person with a similar story.
Maximus died. Russell Crowe, unfortunately, is still alive.
Yes. Yeah. This is true. Yeah. Sorry. And so. Maybe they are going to take it to a fantasy level in a just completely new and different direction.
Well, I mean, that's possible. I don't know if... I don't know. I mean, if they're going to go fantasy route, that's when I start going, really? Because it just feels like you're out... You know what that reminds me of? That reminds me of, what are we going to do for Fast and the Furious? Yeah. Maybe they'll go to space, and then they get to Fast 9. It's like they actually go to space. It's like, wow, that was the joke that you ran out of ideas. You actually did it. Yeah. That's kind of what it feels like to me.
It's kind of like in a boardroom, and there's the head boss there saying, "Okay, what's the next idea?" They go to space. Brilliant. Yeah, we'll go with that. And there's no real sort of thought process behind it. I mean, but then
guys sitting there going, "I was just joking."
Yeah, that's right. I was just playing this game called Fantasy on my thing, and but I mean, with it, some films have taken different directions. Like when you think of the difference between Alien and Aliens, obviously there's no magic added there, but they went in two different directions. One is a great horror film, and one is a great action film.
Yes,
but they both work.
You could definitely see them both in that same universe. You don't feel like they just.
Added magic for the sake of it.
Yeah, it's like saying Alien 1 was this really scary movie, and Alien 2, they went to Hawaii and had a wacky adventure, It's
yeah.
It's tonally, they're both very, very similar. And there's a bit of horror element to Aliens, but introducing magic into, some of these... It's like when the Flintstones introduced Kazoo. Like, what the hell is going on here? For those of you who don't remember Kazoo, because I'm old as dirt, the Flintstones was basically the honeymooners. That's all it was. It was the honeymooners, right?
Yeah.
In the Stone Age, and the jokes were the things, the modern appliances that they did by abusing animals and dinosaurs, and then one season they decided to switch it up, and they brought a magical little green Martian called Kazoo that only Barney and Fred could see, and he was getting them into all sorts of wacky trouble with his magic. And I'm like, that's just, and even for the Flintstones, that was bizarre.
I don't remember that in the Flintstones, but there is a joke in the Simpsons about that, where they say, what does the Simpsons future hold for us? A small green alien that only Homer can see called Osmodiar, and obviously that is just taking the mick out of what the Flintstones did.
It is exactly what it was. Yeah. I'm older than you.
Well, we used to get the Flintstones over here, but not like massively. I just remember it sort of like it was a sort of 6 o'clock tea time thing, as I remember. But right, so sorry, just reading in the comments there, somebody has just said, or Bionic Bigfoot has just said, want to have it as a different time, a different Caesar and different Gladiator. But that's not really like a sequel then, is it? It's kind of, that's more of a reboot if they did bring somebody else in.
That's Mannequin 2.
Yeah.
That's one of those movies where they basically, it's got the same name, and there's not a single person that was in the first one that would come anywhere near it. Except for, I think, Meshach Taylor was in that second one. But, you get the idea.
But he does also say, did we ever show Maximus was 100% dead?
It's been so long since I've seen it. I don't really want to talk to Bionic Bigfoot right now because he's giving me all sorts of shit about my technical knowledge here in the chat. So,
Aren't you used to that?
I don't have to like it.
Okay. But with it, like I say, I remember the scene where he's kind of floating across the wheat, and he's with his kid and his wife, isn't he? I can't. Like I say, it's been a long time since I've seen it.
I always assume that was him in heaven or something. I don't remember.
Well, there you go. There's the magic bit. Somebody just pops up to heaven, knocks on the door. Hey, Maximus, need you down on Earth again, and he just comes down and eats everyone.
Now he's like, I won't do it. All right. I get out of the game. I'm not doing it. 5 seconds later, for no apparent reason, okay, I'll do it.
No, I'm sure he'll be given a fair enough reason to, sacrifice, give up heaven and come back to crappy Earth for a while.
I'm sure he will.
Yeah.
So, Gladiator 2 Electric Boogaloo is coming.
The magic of Maximus.
Yes. Maximus and his amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat.
Now, on the other news that I've got on my screen here, we've got No Time to Die review, but we've also got, which we're going to come on to in a bit, but we've also got XMen Not Inclusive Enough. We're going to talk about that.
I don't think I read that, but go ahead.
Basically, the story is somebody who has taken over one of the presidents in Marvel. Apparently, there's loads of them for different things. She's head of animation content or something or other. Let me click on it and find it out. But she's taken over, and within 4 days, she has said that there has been talks within the Marvel camp. Victoria Alonso, she's called. She is the president of physical post-production, VFX and animation, and she has basically said, to quote her, "I don't know where the future is going." This is with the X-Men. It's funny that people call it the X-Men. There are a lot of female superheroes in the X-Men group, so I think it's outdated. And so they want to change the name of the X-Men to the X-Inclusive Men.
How is it not inclusive? The whole mutant theme was about race relations. That's what it was all about, right? And you got you got green lizard people. You got guys that grow, bones out of their backs. You got blobs. Every type of conceivable weirdo horrible power. Some of it's mostly like body horror.
Yeah.
And yet they're saying it's not inclusive enough. I'm like, there was nothing more inclusive than the X-Men. You saying that it's not inclusive enough, saying that the X-Men was racist or something, you're just flailing now. You're just flailing for ideas.
But it's in the title, X-Men.
Exclusionary men.
Yeah.
So we're going to get the Ink Men, which stands for Incorporated, because that's what this whole shit is. It's just a giant corporation pushing out a product for you morons.
But it was called X-Men just sort of back in the day, because I suppose, obviously back in the day, the white exclusive male blah 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 and everything else was kind of like the main figure. But to me, it always, like you say, incorporated everybody. It was just the X people. They were just a group of people that were.
They were the ones that were including people who weren't, they were an allegory for civil rights. That's what they were. They didn't start out that way, but once they rebooted it in '75, that's when it became an allegory for civil rights. And 1975, we're not even 10 years past the civil rights movement when they did that. So I don't think it was a bad thing to be kind of woke, if you want to call it that, at that time. I think there was I think it was reflecting changes in the culture and good changes in the culture at that time. And while they were at it, he went and got, Aurora from Africa and Kurt from Germany,
yeah.
And Rasputin, Peter Rasputin, Colossus from Russia, and what was it? Banshee, he was from Ireland, and they even got a guy from Japan, but we were still pissed at the Japanese from World War II, so he pissed off after the first episode. And then we got the American Indian guy, and he was killed in the second one because we're still screwing them over.
Still landed there. But again, it was done in a way that was not forced, and it actually taught, predominantly, let's say, sort of kids, younger people that were reading those comments about inclusivity. That's a word. Inclusivity. It was teaching them in a good way without ramming it down their throat. Whereas nowadays it seems to be that just because it's called men, it's the same argument with changing Boba Fett's ship from Slave 1, because slave is now an offensive word that should not be used.
XMen told me you can include women from all races, creeds, wherever, whatever power you might have, as long as you're super hot.
Yeah. We don't want the uglies.
No, there were no fatties. I noticed in the X-Men. They were Rogue, Aurora, Kitty Pryde.
I was going to say there was Grey. Blob, but that was a guy, wasn't he?
Who?
Blob.
Blob was a guy, yeah.
Yeah.
And he was a bad guy because fat is bad.
Yes, obviously.
There was no now the Blob is body positivity man or something.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, but again, you can't take away a product. It's in the same respect, really, that I'm surprised somebody hasn't come forward and said that Batman is wrong or Superman is wrong because he's got man in the title. It's a product that was called that, has been called that for the past 50, 60 years, however long that comic has been going, just to take the name away because all of a sudden it doesn't seem inclusive. It just doesn't make sense.
The woke hate reality. They hate objective truth. So they make up this bullshit constantly so that you're questioning. This is 1984. Orwell was like, dudes, this wasn't a handbook. This was a warning, you idiots.
In the same way that Idiocracy is not supposed to be a documentary.
Yeah, exactly. All right.
I don't think it's going to happen. It's one of those things. I think that they're talking about it.
Oh,
and
are you
it's
kidding?
Probably one of those. It's probably one of those. Let's just cause a bit of controversy to get people back involved with our product type.
Have
of thing.
you seen their product in the last 4 or 5 years? Have you
X-Men.
seen a Marvel comic? The X-Men, any Marvel comic, any DC comic, really, but especially the Marvel comics.
No, I'm not. I've never really read any of them.
They are god awful. They are. The art is bad. The messaging is bad. The wokeness is just goo all over the pages, and there's no beauty in it anymore. Like everybody says, oh, they have a terrible idea, the female form. I'm just like, they had a terrible idea, the male form too. Do you think guys look like that? What do you?
Yeah.
It was aspirational, you dummies. And
excuse me, I look like the Blob, so thanks.
Yeah, no, you got to work on that. But the point is that you had these people who looked their best and were the best that men could and women could be, and now it's like the artwork reflected that there was real effort put into it. It ain't that way anymore. It's like chicken scratching half of it. It's really awful, and it's full of political nonsense. That's where they keep the mainstream stuff in the MCU. They go a little woke here and there, and I know we complain about it, but it's nothing compared to what they did to the comics, because that's a loss leader for them, and they don't give a shit.
I didn't realize. So maybe then the movies will go that way, unfortunately.
Well, a comic doesn't cost that much to put out. Really doesn't, especially digitally.
Yeah.
The movies, you're talking a $300 million feature film. You're just not going to get the butts in the seat if they go woke.
That's the bit I don't understand. I watched a video this week about how Marcia Lucas was talking about Star Wars and about basically how the only way that that the people can stop the movies going in that direction is to vote with your wallets. There are people out there who still defend Kathleen Kennedy and JJ and Ryan and say, oh, they're the greatest movies and I'm going to watch them and everything else. As long as there are people out there like that who put the bums in the seats, they'll keep making them.
Well, I mean, they re-elected Gavin Newsom in California, who has run that. There's poop on the streets in California and the homeless, and they voted him back in. There's a sizable group of people, at least in America, I think it's happening bad in all the West right now, of people who want this stuff, who seem to want to be led, want to be told, want to be a part of this weird cult that has grown up. And I don't know. I mean, yeah, I think there's an audience for it. I just don't know if long term. I mean, you might get a woke like a Captain Marvel, which everybody went to see, and nobody really talks about after the fact or has that many warm feelings about. But because it was woke as hell, and it didn't. It did well because it rode on the back of Infinity War. Came in between Infinity War and Endgame, and people were just salivating to find out anything they could about what happened in the greater story. So they all went and saw Captain Marvel, and it made a lot of money. I think it was like $600 million or $4. It was a lot, and domestically, I think it may have made $1 billion worldwide, and then they say, oh, see, everybody wants to hear our message. No, they don't. They don't. You're missing.
Yeah.
And Star Wars is the same thing. Star Wars, the reason why Star Wars does so well, and that's going to have diminishing returns as the people who saw it the first time around get older and start dying off, and is the goodwill of the original trilogy. The original trilogy was that powerful. And that
really makes me sad to think that A, I'm going to die, and B, when I die, Star Wars is going to get worse.
Well, it's already gotten worse, hasn't it?
Well, I know, but to be fair, it could still get there's still depths it could dive to.
Yeah, well, that's true, but I mean, it's the point is that they made Star Wars. The reason why Star Wars made so much money was on the back of what came before, not because of on its own merits.
Yeah.
The sequels and the prequels did well because of what came before. And the prequels burned a lot of goodwill, but the sequels came back and you say, okay, I'm going to see Luke and I'm going to see Han, I'm going to see Leia again. And people immediately came back on board. And look at it, the receipts and the trajectory of its revenue as it went through the rest of the trilogy.
With
Solo. Han Solo died a horrible death. And that's actually the best of all of them.
And I think it's because people they sort of changed everything, didn't they? Because they took everything to move it to Christmas so that it was released at Christmas, but then they put Solo back at May. But people had been, like you say, burned and realised that they didn't want to see it, and they didn't want to pay Disney for it.
Solo paid for Last Jedi's sins.
Yeah. Yeah,
I think that's exactly what happened there.
Yeah,
and Solo wasn't awesome, and it certainly was photographed badly, but it was way better than Last Jedi.
Yeah,
and the Last Jedi was that bad, and then Rise of Skywalker was just trying to. That was basically Star Wars was a plate that had been thrown on the ground and smashed into dust. And somebody's trying to put back together the plate, and that's Rise of Skywalker.
But at the same time, JJ was also trying to give two fingers back to Rian Johnson by correcting stuff, and so he's trying to fix the trilogy whilst trying to break it again and have a go at the last person. And it just I don't think worked.
So. I don't think it's. I mean, I think sticking it to Rian Johnson was a side benefit, but I think he was trying to fix the trilogy, and I think that. Just by trying to fix the trilogy would give the two fingers to Rian Johnson. Just because that it was everything the trilogy stands for.
That's
Johnson
true,
broke, right?
Yeah, yeah. And if he had managed to fix it, then yeah.
Okay, let's move on here.
Well,
I'm gonna take this over because I gotta talk to something near and dear to my heart. Rocky versus Drago. Rocky 4, the director's cut, baby. There's more cheesy pro-American movie than Rocky 4. It doesn't exist. I mean, you have to go into the depths of
Team America.
Chuck Norris or movies or something like that, right? I mean, you really have to. I mean, the level of cheese in that movie, and yet I just effing love it. So if you're going to come out with a 40-minute longer version of Rocky 4, I am all in.
I never really got Rocky. I've never much been into sport or stuff. I have seen them. The first one was very good. The second one was quite good. The third one was Mr. T, wasn't it? Which I don't really remember much about. The Rocky versus Drago was, like you say, it was just pure sort of go America.
That movie is barely 90 minutes long, and at least 20 of it is montages. And there are 3 separate montages with the same damn song. I mean, it is unbelievable how that made money. I really don't know, because it is objectively terrible.
I mean, with it, obviously, it was, I don't want to say the height of the Cold War, that's not the right term, but it was kind of, the Russians are the bad guys and America are the good guys, and, let's stick it to Russia in a boxing match. That'll solve everything.
That's what I... and as I recall, all the Russians in the arena started cheering for Rocky through the power of patriotism.
Boxing, yeah.
And
boxing is a force for good, because it brings us all together.
That's right. It's we can all change, and everybody can change.
We can all change by watching 2 men punch each other.
That's right. Give each other brain damage.
Yeah. In the other news is about Bond, but I think we're going to leave that one till next week, aren't we?
The only other thing I wanted to mention, I thought this was interesting, is that that ScarJo settled her suit with Black Widow. And
hooray, Black Widow 2's coming out.
Well, that's a good question. I mean, the bridge is burnt. She put out a nice, I'm happy to resolve our differences with Disney. I'm incredibly proud of the work we've achieved. I've greatly enjoyed my creative relationship with the team. I look forward to continuing our collaboration for years to come. What's that mean? Is this a marketing PR bullshit, or are they actually going to start working together? I mean, I don't know. The fact that Shang-Chi made so much money, I think torpedoed her case pretty badly. So I don't know if she burnt the bridges, or if, I mean, she is Black Widow. If they want to keep making movies with that character, which I think is a good character, you got to have ScarJo.
No, I think in this day and age, it should be played by a black guy.
Well, it is called Black. It should be called Black Widower.
Yeah.
That's what it should
be. With it, though, I wonder as well, behind the scenes, that obviously this was all to do with the situation that she wasn't getting paid the bonus that she would have got because they released it on Disney Plus and stuff. I wonder how many other people came forward and said, well, hang on a minute, what is happening in the future? If you are releasing it on Disney Plus, are we going to get the benefits of that as well? And I wonder how much of that we just don't know about has settled this quicker than we thought it would have been.
No, I agree. I mean, I think that the pandemic just accelerated something that was going to happen to the entertainment industry anyway, and that's when and how to release movies on streaming.
Yeah.
And how much as the theaters. As people stop going to theaters, which I think would have happened in the long run, I think that the pandemic just shifted everything into high gear.
Yeah, it fast forwarded everything.
Right. But I think this would have happened anyway. I don't think we'll have another movie make the box office receipts that Endgame did or break those records anymore. I don't think we'll ever have a movie break, those Avatar, Endgame, Force Awakens records. It's just not going to happen because they're going to start releasing it more and more on streaming simultaneously. And even if they don't, like they have this 45-day window, it's like 45, because you used to have to wait at least 3 to 6 months.
Yeah.
But 45 days, I can wait 45 days for a movie.
And when you consider the cost as well of what they're charging, like HBO Max now includes all of their movies in with a subscription price. And so if a movie comes out, when you go to the cinema, it's in the UK, I think the cheapest is about like £10. And then you obviously got all the extras and everything else. If there's just two of you, or if you're taking your family, you could be talking of upwards, 50, 60 quid just to go and see a film.
Yeah, I mean, it gets very expensive to take a family out. Even me and my wife, I mean, we went and saw, and we'll get into this, but we went to the movies yesterday, and we went to a matinee, which wasn't too bad. And, but I mean, it's just the movies, the theater's a ghost town. And I know they're trying, and I think the whole weird stonks thing that happened earlier this year, where people started buying up AMC and GameStop and all that, helped AMC quite a bit get through this.
Yeah.
But I think they may have delayed the inevitable. I don't think theaters will go away completely. There's still a nice thing to do, to go out and everything.
I think they'll remain like a retro thing that some cinemas will survive. I mean, in my old hometown, there was at one time about sort of 3 cinemas, and now they've just opened an IMAX, and they've got a View with 15 screens, and there's another one that's still open. I think, like I say, one of them will probably survive because people will sort of like, oh man, we haven't been to the cinema for ages, let's go there. And so it will be kind of like a niche thing that people will still carry on doing, but it's just like you say, it's never going to reach the numbers that some of the films in history have done.
And if that's the case, then the whole industry is going to have to change its economics drastically, and how they make movies. But because I think there's still people still like to go out and see the big crazy blockbusters. Yeah. I think that's still a thing, and seeing something like Endgame in the theater is, or with people, there's something to that still. But go see some wretched rom-com. I don't need to see that in the theater. I can wait till watch it on my big screen. It's fine.
I mean, we sort of briefly mentioned it earlier. I'm like that with Bond. I've lost interest with Bond a long time ago, and the new one, I will watch it, but I'm not worried about seeing it on the big screen. It probably looks fantastic and everything else, but I've no vested interest in it. I'm quite happy to wait for it on streaming. The only thing I think I said I was looking forward to was Dune, which I've muted on all of my social media accounts because people were starting to ruin it. But again, I want to see that on the big screen because I think that is a big screen movie and I want to get involved with it. But again, that's kind of the only thing I can think of in the future that I know of in works that I'm wanting to see.
Well, speaking of going to the theaters and seeing a movie in the theaters,
excellent segue.
Thank you. I stayed up all night working on that one. I went with my wife and we saw Venom, Let There Be Carnage. And again, the movie theater was mostly empty. We saw it at like 2:30 in the afternoon. And overall, I'll just say I thought it was better and worse than Venom.
Okay, so let's just put this in a bit of a context here. First of all, I haven't seen it, so I know nothing about it. But I'm not bothered about spoilers and stuff because, again, this is one of those things that I'm quite happy to wait for on streaming. But what did you think of the first Venom?
I think the first Venom was unbelievably stupid, but it kind of owned it, and it kind of went for it in a lot of ways as far as the weirdness, and it tried to do. I mean, it was kind of unapologetically bad, and that kind of made it entertaining. in its own way, you know. Its biggest problems was when it tried to be serious, and nobody wanted to see that. Don't be, you know, if you're going to be weird, just be weird.
Yeah.
This one actually kind of brings the weirdness down a little bit.
Okay.
And it has a more coherent story. I don't think it has these as many head scratching moments in it. Where you go, what are they doing? Why is this happening? You know, just, you know, weird things. But the problem with it is that it's more boring because of that. Right. You know, it's more paint by numbers. But at the heart of it, and I don't think people realize this, at the heart of it, this movie is a romantic comedy.
Okay.
Or maybe a sequel to a romantic comedy, where the two that got together, now they're trying to build up their relationship. And then they have a fight.
I was just about to say, with a rom-com, are you talking about, is it Eddie and Venom themselves?
Eddie and Venom, yes, are having couples counts, need couples. At one point, the one guy says these two need couples counseling. Because that's exactly what's going on in this movie. And the whole thing with... And then you have Cletus Cassidy, who I think was... Woody Harrelson is fine in the role. I just don't agree with the way they portrayed him, because in the comics, Cletus Cassidy is basically the Joker.
Okay.
He likes to kill, and he likes to be weird, and he likes to be weird while killing, and Carnage lets him do that. And that's it. That's all there is to him. He's just an insane guy who likes to kill. He doesn't care about anybody or anything. And
but in the movie,
he has a girlfriend that is his light, who is I forget her name. They called her Shriek, and I don't know if she's in the comics or something. Her and maybe those of you in the chat, you could tell me a little bit more if she's a brand new character or if she was in the comics. But she's got like the Black Canary screen, and she's actually black. I don't know if that's a woke thing or if it's just she was the best character. She was fine. I got no issues with it. But I guess to show that Cletus is like, yeah, he's a serial killer, but he's not racist.
Yeah, okay. He doesn't kill. You know, he kills equally.
Yeah, except that he loves this woman. He loves the black lady, and she's just as bad as he is in a lot of ways. And then randomly at the end, like they want to. So she. Okay, let me do a quick synopsis here because I'm getting ahead of myself.
Are we going to do spoilers? Are we going to say spoilers?
We'll say spoilers. If you haven't seen it, I'm sorry, but you know, spoilers. It's on you. Honestly, I don't think that there's... you don't work with the headphones.
Oh, yeah.
Somebody meme that later, okay? Redneck earplugs.
It just makes it louder.
I don't get it. That's redneck noise cancellation. So it starts off in the way back in the deep dark past of 1996. That just bothers me when they show like way back. Like when I was growing up, it was like back in the 50s or the 40s. You know, when there was actually some gothic weirdness back then. And now it's like back in like they show this horrible hospital. It's like it's 1996. They didn't build it to look like that then.
Well, like Gladiator. Yeah, go on.
Yeah. So
Roman Empire. Sorry, go on.
Can I go on? Is it okay? Just because you're funny doesn't mean you have to be honest. I know you're the host, but whatever. So they show Eddie with his girl, and they like talk to each other through one of those little pipes or something on either end of either cell that they're in, and it's like a juvenile home for delinquents. Oh, right, okay. And I say Eddie, it's Cletus. Yes. Cletus is talking with his girlfriend. I can't even remember her name. I call her Shriek. And
I will look her up while you're talking.
They take her away to a place for people like her. And at first I was thinking, I wonder if they mean like XMen or something, or the Charles Xavier, but no, they take her to Ravencroft, which sounds familiar, but I don't know exactly if that's a thing in Marvel Comics, if that's a prison or if that's a place where they do mutant or experimentation and things like that. If
she's
it's like,
called Frances, and she's called Shriek.
Yes.
Naomi Watts. Sorry, go on.
So she gets pulled to this place where she's stuck in a cage and she can't use her powers, or if she tried, it wouldn't matter because everybody stays separated by 2 walls from her of glass and that sort of thing. So she's stuck. Cletus, in the meantime, when he gets out, I guess he just goes on a big killing rampage, and he gets put on death row. And then he wants to talk to Eddie Brock for reasons. And I don't know why he feels like he has a kinship to Eddie Brock. It doesn't. There's no real rhyme or reason other than that happened at the end of the last movie when he had the Ronald McDonald wig on. They've toned down his hair, by the way, a lot. He does not have that Ronald McDonald wig.
Did they tone down the hair, or they just lose the wig?
I don't know if they lost the wig or if they gave him one that looked at least much more, less ridiculous.
Ronald McDonald. Yes.
So he's on death row, and he wants to talk to Eddie again because I guess he's talking to him, and he wants to tell him something. I don't know what he wants to tell him. And Eddie looks at his cell. So he's in like a chicken cage or a dog cage, like right next to his cell, so that Eddie can talk to him. And you have to stay 2 feet away from this thing. But his door is open to his actual cell. And I guess they move him in there so that people can visit him, and then they put him back into his regular cell when they're done. But they don't want him being able to actually. They don't even handcuff him to a table or anything. They want him in a dog cage, which actually, for a serial killer, it makes sense to me. Yes. So fine. So Eddie looks into his cell and he sees all these carvings and pictures and shit in there. And then he gets back. His life is pretty much still a shambles after the last movie. And Venom says, "I saw all his stuff," and he makes him move his arm, so he turns him into an instant inkjet printer, drawing all this shit. And then he's like, "What is this?" He goes, "I don't know." And so he crumples it up and he tosses it away. He draws out something else. He goes, "Now, what is this?" He goes, "I don't know." He crumples it up and he tosses it away again. I'm like, why are you drawing this stuff? You're just going to crumple it up and toss it away. So he draws out one more thing, and then he hits the keyboard and he brings up a picture, and he sets the thing over the picture. And Eddie realizes that this is where Cletus has been keeping all the bodies. And so he thanks to Venom, he's able to find all the bodies. He's immediately back on top. And you know this because he's got a Ducati motorcycle again.
Hooray.
So now I don't know what he does. I mean, I guess I don't know if he's what he does after that, or if he got a job or something, but he got interviewed and now he's got money, and you're back on top. I don't know what that means to be back on top for him, because they don't really illustrate that other than he's got a Ducati motorcycle. So then he and Venom are kind of fighting and working their way through their problems, and finally they have this huge fight, and it's really like, how the wife will toss shit out the window? That's what Venom does to his stuff. He tosses it all out the fucking window, including the very expensive TV. And then finally he leaves Eddie. And then he goes from body to body to enjoy life. And he goes to like a dark nightclub, and he's covered in these neon bracelets and necklaces and shit, and he's talking to everybody, and it's really. I was
just going to say, did you have him like walking down a lonely road in the rain and seeing other couples being happy in a restaurant?
He's out partying. The problem is he keeps killing the people that he's bonded to because they're not Eddie. Like, only a certain people can actually bond to a symbiote.
Yeah, that was in the first one, wasn't it? Yeah.
So these people keep getting turned into husks and dead, and it's played like a joke, I suppose. I'm like going, this is our hero here. And Meanwhile, Cletus calls Eddie in again because now he's been moved up to the front of the line on death row. You know, like he just whisked him up past the, gave him the Disney pass right up to the front of the line of the gas.
I was going to say, I've got number 25. 25's tomorrow.
25's tomorrow. Yeah. So Eddie's kind of pissed, or I'm sorry, Cletus is. I keep mixing him up. Cletus is kind of pissed about this, and he calls in Eddie again, and this is when he bites Eddie's hand. He somehow he got Venom. He starts throwing a bunch of insults at him, and Venom got mad and started doing his technical thing where he started bashing him across, the cell a little bit through the bars. Yeah. And then Cletus grabs Eddie's hand and bites it. And he's like, that's not blood. Well, that turns eventually into Carnage. And that's how he gets away. And he immediately finds his woman that he left all those years ago, breaks her out of her weird steel cage. They go on a rampage. She was shot by a cop earlier in the movie. She was shot. I forgot about this. She was shot by a cop and lost her eye. So she wants revenge on the cop that did that before she ended up in this horrible place that she's in. She wants revenge on the cop. Cletus wants revenge on Eddie. And Carnage wants revenge on Venom because he's got to kill his dad. So, for reasons.
Come on. Sorry, I've just been joined by my critic.
Wait, no, that's all right.
No, don't show people your bum. That's just gross, isn't it?
I've got you in full screen now.
Come here. Right. Say hello to everybody.
This is a top-notch thing. Even he wants to hear it. Hey, Sean, how you doing? Axel Turner's, good to see you.
Sorry. Very professional here.
Yes. So anyway, they want revenge on these three. So, and meanwhile, when Eddie finds out that Cletus has escaped and probably has a monster in him, he's like, oh shit, I need Venom back. And so they have this whole thing about apologizing to each other and it's so bad. And then finally they have a big showdown at the end. And it's very difficult to follow what's going on because it's dark and it's bad CGI, and the dark is used to cover up the CGI, and everything has tentacles everywhere, and and finally at the end of the fight, Shriek decides, hey, we're going too far, Eddie or Cletus, we're going too far. I'm like,
she obviously doesn't know about all the killing that he's done beforehand.
She does. She's all in on it. She knows everything. She's just as bad as he is. But for no reason, she just decides we've gone too far. And then she gets killed by Carnage, and then they use church bells and noise and fire. They kill Carnage, and then Cletus gets eaten by Venom, and then Eddie and Venom flee to Mexico because they've finished the bad guy, but now they're lying. Eddie can't go back to his own life anymore. Too many people know about monsters and stuff. And then, now I'm going to get into some serious spoiler. We get to the mid-credit scene. There's no end credit scene, but there is a mid-credit scene. And the mid-credit scene has them in a hotel, and Venom says, I know all kinds of things because I've got 68 million light years worth of knowledge in my head, and you couldn't believe the things I've seen. And he's just about to show Eddie, and then a big flash of golden light happens, and the hotel is changed. And on the TV, they're talking about they're showing that scene from Far From Home where Peter Parker is Spider-Man. And it's
the news where what's his name, J.K. Simmons is.
Yeah, it's that scene. And apparently they've shifted over now to the MCU.
in a seamless, it just happened way.
My guess is, because I did see the Far From Home, or Can't Go. What is the new movie called?
No Way Home.
No Way Home. where Strange cast that spell, right?
Oh yes, of course.
So I'm guessing.
Oh, that's kind of like the finger click in Infinity Wars, wasn't it? How like in Ant-Man, you didn't see the click, but at the end of Ant-Man 2, wasn't it? They're all in around the van and that, and the three of them disappear and leave Scott in the quantum realm.
So Sony, that is basically Sony saying, throwing in the towel, saying, "Fuck it, take it over, Marvel. We don't know what the hell we're doing." So that's Venom. Let There Be Carnage. I mean, Woody Harrelson's clearly enjoying himself, and
I do like Woody Harrelson. He always gives a great performance.
He does.
I think he's an incredibly underrated actor. He really is. He's one of those people that just pops up every now and then, and you just love him.
Well, there's a reason he was the biggest star out of Cheers,
Yeah.
And he does a great job, and I never thought of Cletus as having a girlfriend, really. I always thought of him as just like the Joker, and he really like the Joker had Harley. You say
Harley Quinn? Yeah, I was just going to say that.
But he didn't give two shits about Harley. He would have.
No, not really.
Cletus loved this woman. It was the only thing he cared about, and that was not how he's portrayed in the comics. Now, I only read him mostly in the 90s when he was just balls out serial killer crazy guy. But I don't know. I mean, he's the movie just kind of really, it's this bizarre romantic comedy with a very paint by numbers superhero fight at the end.
I do feel because this is directed by Andy Serkis, and I do feel that Andy Serkis obviously wants to establish himself as a director. From what I remember, he directed the barrel sequence in the second Hobbit, I think it was.
Shame on you. Shame on you, Andy.
Oh, well, but he obviously wants to set himself up. No, he did the film called Breath, which was very good, with Andrew Garfield. But then he did Mowgli against Jon Favreau's Jungle Book. And I feel really bad for him because, what are you doing? Seriously, I'm so sorry. Oi! She obviously disagreed with me about the about this.
Don't shit on Serkis, man. He just look. He wants to have a career where he doesn't have to dress up in a lycra suit full of ping pong balls.
But I mean, he seems to be quite a good director from what he's had. But at the moment, he's had a movie which I'm gonna kill you. Oi. Thank you. He's had two movies that have come out. That one has been up against Jon Favreau, which was unfortunately never going to work, and one that was, this sequel.
I'm really enjoying watching the dog here. I gotta tell you, every time you turn around, he quits.
I'm not going to strangle her because she's just having one of her funny. Are you seriously? Don't bite. Go over there. Nothing. I'm so sorry about this, everybody. Are you finished now?
So crush that like button for the dog, will you? Crush it.
Right. So yeah, Andy Serkis, and I think Andy Serkis, I called him then, Serkis. I do feel sorry for him because I think if he was given a good original IP and given something that he could do well, he would smash it. But so far he's been given a couple of movies which are just bound, well, I don't say he's bound not to have been good, but just not to have done very well. Like I say, that Mowgli was never going to go up against Jon Favreau, and this Venom is the same.
Didn't he do, maybe it wasn't him, I don't know. I thought he did one just recently called, let's see. It was like
Ruins of the Empire.
No, it was like a movie with kids that it was like King Arthur's Legend, and they had to come together as Knights of the Round Table. It was like a new generation, and Merlin was there.
I know the one. It was directed by Joe Cornish, so I can look at it from there.
That was Joe Cornish. What did Serkis have a? I don't know why I've got. Oh, maybe it was his kid that was in it. I don't remember.
Oh, actually, saying that does ring a bell. It was called The Kid Who Would Be King.
That's it.
And yeah, as I remember, it was his son or something that was in there. Who I can't see there.
Louis George Serkis. That's where I'm getting that from. Okay,
there you go.
So he didn't really have that much to do with it. Just his kid was in it. All right. So yeah, I don't. Did he do? Who did the first Venom?
Do you know what? I couldn't even tell you. I was trying to think of that earlier while we were talking, and I'm going to have to go back and look at it. So if we look at Tom Hardy, like I say, I can't even remember who directed the first one. It's a name that rings a bell, and that's all I can tell you, which doesn't say a lot. It was directed by Ruben Fleischer, who has done something recently which was awful.
Ruben Fleischer. Wow, I never heard of him. It was a. I don't know. The first Venom has this kind of. I mean, it's not good, but it does have this air of insanity to it that's kind of fun.
I think it's with some movies, if they embrace that tongue in cheek, they work. You know, and then if you know that everybody is a bit tongue in cheek with it, it works. But when a movie tries to take itself too seriously, when it's not a serious movie, it sort of loses all credibility. Whereas I'm trying to think of something off the top of my head, which I sort of can't. But I mean, if there are films out there which, you know, all the actors know, the director and everybody else knows this is awful, but we're going to have fun and we're going to make it and we're getting a paycheck at the end of the day and we're going to sit down and we're going to laugh at it, you know, and then it works that way.
Well, they did have there were some fun moments with the couples fighting between Venom and Eddie, where they're bitching at each other and they're destroying each other's stuff and they're arguing and bickering, and then when Venom goes out on the town and tries to do his own thing and he ends up at that nightclub, that was kind of fun because everybody was like in these weird costumes. Everybody thought it was a big costume, you know, even though he's like 8 feet tall and hulking over everybody. It's a great costume, man, because everybody's high as shit. But he's having fun. You know, those kind of moments, that was kind of fun. But then it just kind of went to, and big superhero fight movie. Yeah. Okay. You know, a little bit of, two guys with the same basic powers. And I mean, that's what we saw in the last movie. So now we
also saw that in Spider-Man 3 as well, didn't we? Because that's where Spider-Man fought Venom. And again, it was kind of that, they both have the same abilities type of thing.
Yeah, but now it's even more so, you know, when you get a symbiote against a symbiote. It's also, there's something weird about how they portray the symbiotes. They really don't, like, I always kind of got the idea in the comics that Venom and Brock was more the mouthpiece and more in control, more the like, I didn't get the feeling there were two people talking. Like, once in a while he might answer him in his head, but for the most part it was much more of a merging. It was much more subtle in the differences between the two. And here it's just two guys that are just together. You know, it's a completely and he could get off.
It's not 2.5 men. It's 1.5 men.
Yeah, it's just two guys bickering with each other. I don't feel like there's some symbiotic relationship between them. He just wears this other thing as a suit, but they don't. Yeah. They're not in each other's thoughts, or maybe they are, but it's more. There's a clear delineation, separation between them. Whereas in, I mean, even in Spider-Man 3, you felt like the goo kind of got into Brock's head. Yeah, a little bit, and that there was
whereas Spider-Man was sort of strong enough to fight it because he had those superpowers, whereas obviously Brock was just a regular person.
Right.
Not Brock. Yeah. Brock. No, not Brock.
Brock. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. Sorry. Brock. Yes, of course it was.
But here it's more of a buddy cop, romantic comedy, couples. I don't know what you call it. It's just, it's not. And I mean, that's not terrible. It can be played for laughs, but they didn't really go far enough in any of the directions. And then they just kind of went safe at the end to have the big superhero fight at the end.
Is this more? Do you feel that this was more of a setup then for what's going to happen in No Way Home with the whole Doctor Strange thing?
No, I don't. No, I think it was its own deal.
It's just the way you're talking. It sounds like a
the mid-credit scene, certainly, sure. I mean, I suppose you could say that, but I don't think that the whole movie was that.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I think it was just. I think it was just a paint by number sequel. I just think it was. Honestly, I thought it was kind of boring. I mean, it's not horrible. I mean, in some ways, it's not as bad. I mean, technically and story beat wise and everything, it's not as bad as the first one. There aren't enormous, huge, giant plot holes. There's probably a few, but nothing that really stood out.
Draws you out, yeah.
Yeah, but the flip side of it is it's just not very. It's so paint by numbers. It's just dull. I mean,
it's one of those films that's just it's given to the audience because they've been asking for it for a long time.
Yeah, I'd say so. The only thing surprising was the end, was the mid-credits scene, which I had fortunately not spoiled myself on. It's like, oh, he's in the MCU now, which, I mean, that was my surprise. That was the extent. Oh, he's in the MCU now. That's it. That's as far as I got for my big surprise. That tells you how much boring the rest of the movie was.
It is a shame that, they pour millions into these movies to make this kind of thing, and it just, I mean, I see it will make money. From what I've seen on social media, people are busting to go and see it, and they're desperate to go, and it's going to be absolutely fantastic and everything else, and you've got that huge fan base which is going to put the bums on the seats, but it just doesn't seem to, I don't want to say matter, is that the right word? In the sort of scale of things, when you think about, like, let's talk about the MCU, how each film progressed to that end game. Each character and everything that they did all moved towards that end game. This is just sort of like a standalone Venom sequel.
Yeah, I mean, you know what it really was screaming for? It was screaming for an R rating. That's what it needs. It needs to be an R-rated movie, and they need to go balls to the wall with the weirdness and the gore and the killing and all that. They need to really embrace that, but they're trying to hit the 4 quadrants, so it neuters itself in a lot of ways.
Which is unironic because Deadpool and Deadpool 2 did so well.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the biggest problem, I think, with both of these Venom movies. Is like, if you're going to show an alien creature that eats people and turns them into husks unless you're with the right, match, then go for it. Bring out the crazy, bring out the curse words, do it, do it right. Or because if you try to make it PG-13, it's just you take all the teeth out of it, quite frankly. And that's I think that's its biggest problem, is that neither of these movies can be what they could be because you're constrained by the PG-13 rating.
Yeah, it's a shame. Like I say, it spun no interest for me. Like, I will get around to watching it, even though you've sort of gone through all the story and everything else. But I've just, it's not something that I think to myself, oh yeah, I've got to go and see that. Got to go and see what happens to.
You'll watch Venom it. You'll watch it, and even if I hadn't told you the story, you knew exactly what was going to start happening for the most part.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, you knew they were going to have a big punch out at the end. Somebody was going to have to be rescued. It was nothing. And again, like I say with Free Guy, that's okay. You could do a paint by numbers if you do it right and you do it well.
Yeah.
But if you're doing it the way they're doing it, I mean, like I said, I was bored, and then it did itself no favors with the dark photography and the confusing action scenes. Very, very, very hard to figure out who was punching who where and what was going on. And
it is kind of weird because, I mean, from what I remember in The Hobbit 2, if it is the one with the barrels, that whole sequence, I was going to say, do you know what, now I'm thinking about it, I was going to say was actually quite well done, but now I think about it, it kind of wasn't. It was cheesily over the top.
That sequence was terrible. I'm sorry.
And I think some people can do... I grew up on Jackie Chan, and watching Sammo Hung and Young Byul, I think was the other guy, and the three of them working together, and they used to work with the director, I forget his name now, but he understood the beats of fighting because they'd all grown up together and they filmed together and they'd done theatre together and all this kind of stuff. They understood how to put together these amazing action sequences. And I think some people do understand it and then other people just don't. And it's kind of a shame when somebody who is trying to do action tries to do action. And I think somebody said that about Black Widow, how it seemed quite a few of the scenes had probably been done in the CG action department before the director ever even was signed, type of thing, because they just seem out of place. And
I
it's a shame
that.
Yeah, and it's a shame with Andy Serkis that again he's been given a movie which it's just, like I say, I just didn't. I can understand why he's done it. It's the same with what's his name, who did the King Kong versus Godzilla, Adam Wingard. I can understand why you'd say yes to a project like that because it was going to be huge, but at the same time, he didn't put any kind of stamp on there at all. The film itself was, it was instantly forgettable. It was Kong had an axe and there was a Bluetooth and, it was just a confusing mess. But at the same time, if you're being asked, if somebody came along to me and said, oh, would you do Captain Marvel 2? I'd still say yes, just to put my name on the map.
Do you think, you bring up an interesting question in my mind. A lot of these big movies, they get some director that's done like one little or two little indie films, and they give them this $200 million movie.
Classic example, Chloe Zhao, who directed Nomadland, has just gone on to do The Eternals.
Yeah. So
I never understood that decision.
Well, I think
no offense to Chloe.
I think there's a lot of these big. I mean, that's you could say that about Rian Johnson, really.
Yeah.
And a lot of these guys, and I don't know. I mean, for James Gunn, I think it worked, but he had a few more movies under his belt before he got there. But his movies were weird. I liked them,
but again, that was embraced in the movies, and I think also I would say with James Gunn is he understood the property very well. He grew up on comic books. He's always said how he's loved comic books, and so when he wrote those films and did the screenplay for them, he knew where to take the characters and how to develop them. Whereas, like I say, Chloe Zhao, for example, just like I say, because it's the one that springs to mind, Nomadland was fantastic, absolutely beautiful film, but it was very budget and very independent. And then, like you say, she's now been given $200 million to go and make Eternals, and I do think to myself, really, that's a hell of a leap. Like you say, you can understand it with some directors how they work up to that, but they do seem to just sort of grab a small indie director who's done well, obviously she won an Oscar, and then put them in the position where they're...
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how many of them are suited to that, because I look at the Eternals trailer, which was there yesterday, and I'm like going, this just looks dull and lifeless, and then they have like that one moment, like you have I guess he's gay, with the gay black Eternal who says, it's never saved the world, your sarcasm. I'm like, what is this? It feels so out of place.
Yeah.
And then I look at the Spider-Man No Way Home, which I think is done by the same guys that have been doing the Spider-Man movies, and they seem to really have it figured out how to make that enticing and appealing, and seem to understand the character and characters that they're working with. I don't know. I mean, sometimes you get a director and he really nails it. Like I said, a James Gunn. But I mean, do you think it's these guys? Do they have the control that they need, or do they just do not understand? I mean, you make a small movie like a Nomadland, and you've got your entire crew is with you in a van, right?
Yeah.
I mean, basically. Yeah. And in this, you've got people working in Korea and Japan and Australia and UK and here and different. Everything's a Zoom call, and you've got heaps of people just doing nothing but special effects, working on shit you have never really. You don't even have the slightest idea how some of this stuff works, and how could you? I mean, from a technical standpoint, it's insane. the access to equipment and tools that she's going to have. I mean, I wonder how many of these guys just get completely overwhelmed.
Well, funny enough, whilst you were talking, I just looked up, because in other respects it does work. When you think of well, not Endgame, but I mean in particular Endgame, but I mean Captain America, Civil War, the Russos hadn't really, or not Civil War, Winter Soldier, the Russos hadn't done much. True. They've done the Council of Dads, they've done a bunch of TV stuff. You, Me and Dupree is probably the only biggest movie that they've done, apart from like Arrested Development. But then when they came in and did Winter Soldier, again, they absolutely smashed it.
Well, I mean, look at, Peter Jackson. I mean, he'd done The Frighteners, which had some special effects in it. Pretty dodgy these days, but it's a fun little movie. And he did a lot of weird horror. I think some of these horror guys do better because they have to work with a lot of special effects, even if it's practical. Even if it's just, ketchup packets, they have to work on things in a different way. Sam Raimi, right?
Yeah.
And some of these guys come from horror that seem to do well in the superhero genre. I'm trying to find a commonality here so that I can pick out of the air. Is what is that it? Maybe these horror directors or these weirdo directors that direct these really bizarre things that can transition much easier to superhero than somebody who does something like Nomadland. I'm not saying Nomadland's a bad movie. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying that's not exactly the same deal.
It's complete. It's not like a prequel to any of the Marvel movies, is it?
No.
It's a completely different. It's a whole different genre of almost filmmaking, if you like. Because, like you say, it was done in such a budget, and I felt, because I did the review of it, and I remember thinking that a lot of the people seemed real. That they were actual real people and they weren't acting, and so you're working with that in that environment, and then obviously working then with a bunch of professional actors like Angelina Jolie and all the other people
and
who
are
these Eternals.
Fucking egos.
Yeah.
I mean, she goes from making this movie about a lot of homeless junkies living in their vans, and granted, Robert Downey Jr. can relate to that, but the rest of them. That was a long ways for that joke. These are the jokes.
I wonder, like you say, what decision process they go through that they, whoever saw Nomadland sort of said, "Oh, she would be great to carry on."
Eternals, which is one of the weirder properties that they have. I mean, you got those giant planet-sized Eternals, and you got magic / sci-fi wizards, and. I mean, it's not exact. I mean, let's face it, Captain America is kind of easy in a lot of ways. It's very well defined what he is and what he does. Superman in some ways is easy, even Batman.
Yeah.
But the Eternals or Doctor Strange, that's when things start getting a little out there. Trying to do it right.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean,
it's gonna. I mean,
I guess it's just hit or miss. I mean, Christopher Nolan, the Batman trilogy, right? I mean, he had a few under his belt, but
again, they were very different movies, weren't they?
Yeah.
They to sort of come along and do Batman, and it's strange, isn't it? Again, I wonder how much it is about, because I know Chris Nolan, I'm sure, was a fan of Batman and read a lot of the comics and stuff, and I wonder again is how much the people understand the property. When you think about bringing it back to Star Wars, how much Rian Johnson and JJ understood the property, and Kathleen Kennedy understood about Star Wars, because it seemed like they didn't understand any of it.
Well, it certainly is a collaborative thing, and you're kind of beholden to your idiot corporate suits. That doesn't help anything. But you can flip it around. I mean, Joe Johnston had done a lot of movies. He was an old hand, and I love The Rocketeer. I mean, I think it's a perfect World War II era superhero movie.
Yeah,
and yet, and by no means it's not terrible, but I think Captain America: The First Avenger is the worst of the three Captain America movies. It's great until he rescues his soldiers and goes full Captain America, and then it's like they forgot they had 40 minutes of movie left. and they have to figure out, okay, he's got to lose Bucky, get on the plane, crash to the ice. Okay, we're done.
Fair enough. Right, okay, the actual ending.
Yeah,
okay. Because I didn't mind Witness. I didn't mind First Avenger.
I like the First Avenger. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying that as a complete, well put together movie, I think Winter Soldier and Civil War are better. I think both of those are better movies than the First Avenger. So and again, I wouldn't call it a failure by any stretch of the imagination. I'm just saying it doesn't quite. It's so good until he rescues his men, and then it kind of forgets. But then,
like you say, with Civil War and Winter Soldier, both done by the Russos, who kind of almost came out of nowhere. And yet, like I say, absolutely. I mean, Winter Soldier is not just one of the best MCUs. I mean, it's kind of almost one of the best movies ever made.
I think it is the best MCU. I still do.
Yeah, but again, I wonder what it was that somebody saw in them to say. Because I mean, the movies they've done afterwards, I've not seen Cherry, and there's another one they did, which was, oh no, it's just Cherry, isn't it?
Yeah, they did one that they said that it was like. Like they produced it, which means they had their name on it for cachet, but they really had nothing to do with it or very little. I don't remember what it was. It was something came out during the pandemic.
Everything was Cherry. Extraction with Chris Hemsworth, which was done by Netflix.
Yeah. That was it. So yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of getting way off Venom here, but I'm just kind of interested. You just kind of poked my brain. It's like, well, what if XYZ, you know? So
it's like I say, it's interesting who they get to pick and who they get to direct, and then sometimes it just doesn't work. I watched a Roger Corman movie the other day, and I didn't realize it was Roger Corman, and I was watching it and thinking, this is like you say, paint by numbers. I think there was a song in the middle of it which referred to, it was with Dick Miller, actually, the movie called Bucket of Blood, and he's it was great. It was really, really good, but there was a song in the middle of it saying that this man's a murderer and he's going to go to jail, and Dick Miller's going like this, and I'm thinking, it's really cheesy. And then when at the end it said directed by Roger Corman, I was like, perfect. Oh, right, okay, yeah, I understand that now.
Yeah, one day I have got to watch the Toxic Avengers. I feel like I need to turn in my movie geek card by not having watched those yet.
Yeah, I've seen the first one. The first one was great. I saw the first one recently. In fact, if you look on the lastmovieoutpost.com and do a search for it, I'm sure I did a review of it.
I think you did, and I think that's what got me thinking about it again. It was one of those that I saw and I wanted to see, and then I just never got around to it. Then it kind of fell out of the public consciousness, and now I've seen kind of a rebirth of people talking about it again. So I need to watch it.
I've been going through a whole 80s fest. My podcast this week will be mostly 80s movies and things like Ticks, and as I said, Dead and Buried, which I watched last night, which was actually fantastic. It was written by Dan O'Bannon, Alien Dan O'Bannon.
Oh yeah.
And it was the whole story kept me guessing all the way through, and at the end I was just like, no way. That was I really enjoyed that, and it was kind of the most original thing I've seen in quite a while, I think.
What was it called again?
Dead and Buried. 1980. I'll tell you when, because where are we? No, back then more. It was like 1985, I think it was. And like I say, it was very clever. It was, funny enough, the second Dan O'Bannon film I'd watched this week, because I'd watched another one of his earlier. It was 1981.
Oh, okay.
Directed by Gary Sherman, and it's definitely worth looking up. What got me was the opening credits had Dan O'Bannon and Stan Winston in them, so I thought, oh, I'm going to enjoy this, because anything that sort of Stan, those that
you know, got to get Winston's, something entertaining, yeah.
Out of them, but Dan did also. I watched this week was not Dark Star, which I did see again, but
I've got that fantastic. Queued up. I'm going to watch Dark Star here soon. I got to go through my. It? I haven't. I love John Carpenter, but I got to watch it. I hear it's okay, but it has a few moments that are really good. but the rest, it's like not as good as you might think.
It's kind of 2001 if it was a comedy. The other one I watched of his was Return of the Living Dead, and it's funny because I did say on Twitter that Return of the Living Dead is to Night of the Living Dead what Dark Star is to Alien.
Now, Return of the Living Dead is not exactly a part of the Living Dead canon, I guess. Like you had
they
Night, Dawn, and Day of the Dead, but Return is like its own thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's kind of a spin-off, but they do mention it as a homage and sort of say, "Oh, there was a chemical that brought these people back to life and everything else." So I think it's kind of they wanted it based in the same universe, but they didn't get the rights.
Makes sense.
But that was directed by Dan O'Bannon, and it was, like I say, I quite enjoyed that as well because it was awful, but again, nobody was taking it seriously, so everybody was just having fun with it.
Yeah, I don't get as many. I don't watch as much horror as I probably should, but I don't know. It's just never been my thing. Is watching a lot of gore and horror, but I do appreciate the good ones.
Yes,
Halloween and those. And we do have our 31 Days of Horror going on right now, kiddos. So you can each day we have a new horror movie we're revisiting and recommending.
There's been some interesting ones so far. A couple actually I haven't seen. Well, not couple, but no, that's because I've got the list. I know what's coming up. I was going to say it's only the third. There could have been a couple yet, but yes, they've been interesting reads so far with those. So yeah, again, check the website.
Reanimator has been on my list for a while. That and I have seen I've seen Reanimator. From Beyond. That's the one I need to see. By the same guy who did Reanimator. Reanimator is hilarious, but Dead Alive is or From Beyond I haven't seen yet, and I keep meaning to do that one. I think that's the one where the guy has the penis growing out of his head or something. It's really bizarre.
Again, it was I can't think of his name now. Stuart Gordon, wasn't it? Who sort of directed and produced a lot of those Lovecraft movies. And again, nobody thought that they were, winning any Oscars there. But what they were going to do was just make some pure entertainment, and that's what they ended up doing.
They're more memorable than a lot of the schlock that came out even 4 or 5 years ago. So
Yeah, exactly. Right, so I was just going to say, maybe next week then we could talk about, because we briefly mentioned the Bonds, and I know you've done your retrospects. If people look on the YouTube channel here, you can see your retrospects of Bonds. Maybe we could talk about that next week.
I need to get into the Roger Moore era, and I just don't want to.
They're good in a camp way.
Yeah, I know. It's just I can see why people, especially when I was younger, because there was only the 3 Bonds. There was Lazenby for 1, and then there was Connery and Moore. And so everybody was like Connery hands down. And I could see why.
Yes, out of those 3, yes.
I like Roger Moore a lot. I like him as an actor. I like him in a lot of roles. I loved his spoofing himself in Cannonball Run. I don't know if you've ever seen that, but it's... He plays himself. He plays sort of like a mocku. I was going to say mockumentary. That's not the right word, but like he's mocking his own persona.
Sort of, yes, which is very nicely done.
He's at this. For some reason, every film back then had a fight with bikers. I don't know why. Any car chase or something, they had a fight with bikers, and. At one point, he's like, I have to warn you, I'm Roger Moore. The guy goes, who? Roger Moore. And the guy slugs him, and you could actually hear the glass shattering as he falls over.
That might have to go back on the list. I might need to watch those again. Because, I haven't seen them in a long time, but they were great.
They're dumb as hell, but I enjoy them.
Again, like I say, it's entertainment at the end of the day, and you can be entertained by serious things. I completely get that, but if when a director and a whole cast go together to make a movie which is just going to be enjoyable to watch, that's the key to it.
I agree. So, shall we wrap it up? I think
Indeed.
We're actually 126, I see, which is maybe a little longer, but that's kind of nice.
I think we did well talking about a film I haven't seen.
I thought so. I had to carry the whole goddamn show for you there, George. So, just saying.
I did switch off a couple of times, but it sounded like a good film.
You were more entertained by the goddamn dog than you were by me.
Oi, stinky.
Which, considering the film I was talking about, I can understand that. So next week I think we'll discuss Bond. I'll try to get my script together and start watching some of the Roger Moores. Up until then, I need to get that done.
I have actually been through them all. I've been through from Dr. No to Spectre.
I have watched them all at one point or another, just not recently. And I started in when I made my first 3 Bond retrospectives. And, just the time. And then, of course, my time lately has just been crazy. So, anyway, so thank you very much, everyone. We appreciate it. Keep coming back here every Sunday afternoon for the live stream. Of course, you can watch it again later. Like, share, subscribe, hit that notification bell. And remember, we are www.lastmovieoutpost.com. You can reach us at contactus@lastmovieoutpost.com. You can hit me up on Twitter at Drunken Yoda 1 or at Movie Outpost for our larger Twitter feed. And George, you are at not George Lucas?
No, not George Lucas.gmail. No, hang on, not George Lucas1 at Gmail, and then at. Yeah, sorry, I'm miles away here.
Twitter.
It's not George Lucas1. You can
George
find me
Lucas
on there.
1. Yes, I know. And you can send me a tweet, and I'll get back to it within a week or a week and a half or so, because that's how often I check my Twitter.
I'm on there all the time, and you can see all the movies that I watch on there all the time as well.
There you go.
And also you can hear about them in the what I'm trying to make weekly podcast, which is usually out on a Wednesday or a Thursday. But again, you can check the website for that, lastmovieoutpost.com.
That's true. And then this one will also be up in an audio form, so you can always listen to it. If you're already listening on the podcast, thank you very much. We appreciate it. Give us a shout out on iTunes or whatever particular podcast software you have. Give us a rating. And if you want to watch it live, like I said, noon Central Time on Sundays. We'll be here. So keep coming back.
Or if you're in a normal part of the world, 6 p.m. That's
normal,
the UK.
Yes. the place we left. And we're happy to do it.
Ungrateful colonials.
Yeah, that's right. We don't sit there and mess around with a stupid royalty and all those weirdos. Anyway. This is about ready to turn to a full-on war again. Shooting.
As the movie went dark, both Yoda and George got into quite a fight.
All right.
Excellent.
Then.
Well,
thank you very much
again, mate.
Yep, I enjoyed it. And thank you all very much for watching. Take care, and we will see you on the next stream.